This happened on a Sunday night when I was about 10 years old in the mid-90s. My family house was on a short street, a dead end created by a railroad track. We had a 3-house story, which was the farthest from the tracks, with windows on every floor, 2 in the basement. The stairs from our bedrooms upstairs led directly to the front door, which connected to a closed-in mudroom/porch, which also had a screen door and a glass door that only locked from the inside. Even friends and extended family would wait outside to be let into the porch, as that's where the doorbell was. From inside the porch, you could see right up the stairs through the window in the door. Across the house, parallel to the front door, was the back door. Both had a large window in them. It must have been June, because my older brother had a soccer game, and I only had a week of school left. I personally found watching him struggle on the field and being forced to cheer while being eaten by bugs really boring, and I had just gotten a box set of Animorph books I desperately wanted to be alone with. After about an hour of reasoning and pleading, I finally convinced my parents to let me stay at home alone for the first time while they went to the game. They were only going to be gone for a few hours, and although we didn't live in the best neighborhood, our neighbors were close family friends. I'd be fine. Mistake. Usually before a game, we'd all go out and eat together, but since I was staying home, they ordered a pizza from down the street, my brother's favorite. I'd already been face deep in the first book for half an hour when the doorbell rang. Pizza! I walked out from my bedroom and down the stairs to the living room, and got to the bottom of the stairs, and my father was at the door having a conversation with the delivery guy. They were talking about soccer, so I just decided to take the pizzas and keep on keeping on. Which was when I noticed the delivery guy staring at me intently. He was a middle-aged Caucasian with an accent and was smiling at me in a way I recognized. It was the same smile I had on my face when I told my parents I was old enough to spend the evening in the house alone. Fake, but convincing. I walked past him through the living room to the kitchen and threw the pizzas on the counter and shoved my face into my book. My father talked to him for a few more minutes about sports and then closed the door. My family sat down to eat and chat while I forgot all about them, the food, and the delivery guy. Before they left around 6:30 p.m., my parents wrote down all the emergency numbers, gave me instructions not to open the door, and headed out with my brother, and I waved them off. Excited to finally have the house to myself, if only to read in silence, I locked the main door and headed up to my room to read. It was blissfully quiet, save for the sound of my dog's occasional barking in the backyard. I had just finished the first book and immediately started on the next when the doorbell rang. The doorbell rang and my dog started barking in the backyard. I was up in my bed immediately. I looked at my alarm clock for the first time since they left. They were at 8 p.m. My whole family was at the game, and any extended family in the province was as well. No one would be coming over without calling, especially on a Sunday night. The doorbell rang again, and again. I remained frozen in place, my book crumpling in my shaking hands. I, for the first time, was completely alone and terrified. My sly kid smile flashed in my mind. I thought I was so clever convincing my parents I wasn't scared to be alone. And then another smile flashed in my memory. The pizza guy. And then the banging started. Loud successive bangs that rattled me, if not the house. And now from the backyard, my dog was livid. I could hear him barking and whining at the back door. I wanted to call someone, but the only phone was in the kitchen, which involved walking right past the front door. Trapped. I felt trapped. I panicked. I was scared to leave my room as my feet would be visible to whomever it was once I entered the hallway. But what if it was just a neighbor? Or an untimely Jehovah's Witness? I checked the alarm clock again and was surprised that only minutes had gone by, and my parents wouldn't be back for an hour and a half minimum. I'd have to wait it out. So I did. I got up as silently as possible and closed my bedroom door. Eventually, all the barking, ringing, and banging stopped. I waited for half an hour and then opened my door and crept out of my bedroom. A mistake. I crept down the hallway to the top of the stairs, trying to press myself into the far wall as out of sight as possible. But all the lights were on, and I realized that it was obvious that someone was home. I peered quickly down the stairs in the window, looking through it to the glass porch door, and saw no one. No one was there. I tore down the stairs and ran for the back door and checked outside. Nothing but my dog, who was all too happy to run inside. I let him through a crack and slammed the door after him, locking it. And I realized it hadn't been locked before. Another mistake. I turned to the phone, grabbing it, and about to dial my neighbor's number when my dog started acting like he was going to the vet's. A low growl, accompanied by a crouch. I froze and looked in his direction, and I followed his gaze to the window and the inner front door, where inside my porch, past the front screen and glass door, stood a man I've never seen before, and he was staring at me, livid. I froze, paralyzed with fear as I looked at him, and I couldn't look away. He was tall, slim, and had bags under his eyes. His hair was shoulder length and unkempt. He lifted his hand and placed it on the window, and then looked down as he tried to turn the knob twice, but it was locked. I came out of my paralysis the second his eyes left mine. I moved quickly to the side of the wall that led to the basement stairs. It blocked us from being able to see each other. Hiding felt good. My dog, still in the corner, inched towards me, low to the ground and still growling. I couldn't breathe. My heart was pounding. This couldn't get any worse. Wrong, he started yelling. I saw you, boy. I saw you. Open the door. My stomach nestled in my throat. I started crying. Trapped. I've never really had a flight or fight moment. Only flight or flight, but there was nowhere to go. Upstairs led right past him, and going into the basement seemed even more terrifying, as I'd have to walk past the window in the middle of the staircase that looked out into the alley leading to my backyard. I saw you. You can't hide forever. You have to pay. You have to pay. He screamed through the door window, shaking the door as he pulled on it. I thought he would just break the window and unlock the door, so I descended slowly down the steps to the basement, going halfway just to put some distance between. It was a mistake. I stood still, waiting, and then silence. Nothing, and then the sound of the glass door and the screen door to the outside opening and slamming. More silence. My dog straightened out, walked over to the top of the stairs, and then looked right past me and started growling. I can still see you. I see you. I see you, boy, and you have to pay. I jumped and turned my head. And through the window to the alley, I saw his face. He was laying on the ground, staring at me. I see you. I know you're home. I see you. I bolted up the stairs to the inner front door, ripped it open, and then locked the glass door to the porch, and then backed up into the living room, closing the main door behind me, locking that too. I ran to the kitchen, grabbed the phone, unplugged it, and turned back around. It was at the door again, this time outside the porch. I steeled myself and ran up the stairs with the phone, dog in tow, to my parents' bedroom, which was the only room with a working phone jack and a lock on the door. And then the doorbell started to ring. I closed and locked their door behind me, left their lights off, and plugged in the phone. I dialed my neighbors and got their answering machine. I dialed again. Machine. Every ring of the phone was matched by a ring of the doorbell. I called them over and over, finally whispering a message. Tom, it's Kevin. A man is trying to get into the house and I'm alone. I peered out of my parents' window and looked down into the front yard. He was still there, pacing, walking up and down the stairs, looking in the windows, walking out of sight as he entered the alleyway and then back into the front. I noticed my neighbor's car wasn't there. They weren't even home, and it still hasn't occurred to me to call 911. So I hunkered down and waited with my dog, watching from the corner of the window. He walked back up to the porch, tried the door, and then the doorbell went off a few more times, and then he walked down the stairs and and headed back out into the street. He walked a bit down the sidewalk away from the dead end towards the main road and then stopped and turned around, walking back towards the house. He stopped again and looked up, directly at the window I was looking through, but the room was dark. He couldn't see me. Instead of turning back around, he continued walking down the streets and crossed the street when he reached the train tracks. He walked back up the other sidewalk, staring at my house all the while, and kept going until he reached the main intersection and turned the corner. I stood in the corner of the window, watching the street for what seemed like hours until my parents' car pulled up in the front house along with the neighbor's car. They all got out, and my mother headed towards the house when my father started chatting with the neighbor's husband. They had left me with an emergency contact number for somebody that wasn't going to be home because they were going out together. I unlocked the door and booked it downstairs, instantly crying with relief as I unlocked the inner door and then the glass porch door. I recounted the night's events to my parents in the kitchen through the tears, and they had just started to calm me down, and that's when the doorbell rang. I started to shake and cry again, and my father burst out of his seat and barreled towards the door and swung it open. And there he was, the man. He stood there smiling a disgusting smile, and I immediately took off down into the basement. My mother was right behind me. I heard my father and him arguing loudly for a few minutes, and then my father slamming the door. My father called my mother and I back upstairs, and then after I made him promise the man was gone, I walked up into the kitchen. My father sat me down and explained the situation. Earlier, my father hadn't had enough cash on him from the pizzas. He had told the delivery guy that he would be back in 4 hours, but had to make a game and didn't have time to get more cash. The delivery guy agreed, wished my brother good luck in his game, and then had passed the message on to the guy who would be working the closing night shift. The delivery guy had misunderstood, thinking that he was to return immediately and collect payment. He explained it all to my father as if he had rung the doorbell a few times and then left. Not that he had been circling the house, terrifying me for over an hour. He told my father that he wasn't sure if anyone was home, so he looked around the back but only saw my dog, so he left, only returning, coincidentally, minutes after my parents returned, armed with a convincing story. Kids have such an imagination. Sorry that I frightened him, he said. I didn't believe him, but my parents didn't believe me. Suffice to say, I brought my books with me to every soccer game after that.